Today I want to talk to you about the parts of speech. We are actually going to be discussing 5 parts of speech today. First, let's talk about nouns. The first words you ever spoke were probably nouns. You learned nouns first because nouns are words that name things. You found that using nouns is much easier than pointing. Nouns sometimes name things that you can see, but not in the usual sense. These are abstract nouns. For example, love, peace, boredom. Most people know what boredom looks and feels like, even though they can't see it in the same way they can see a kitten or a lawnmower. These kinds of words name a quality or a feeling rather than a physical object. So nouns can be something you can see and touch, or they can be more of just an idea or a feeling. Along with verbs, nouns are probably the most important words in our language. Every sentence has to have at least one noun or pronoun in it, otherwise you don't have a sentence. Speaking of pronouns, that's our second part of speech. Actors and actresses who are about to take a hard fall usually stop and yell, "Stand in!" This means that someone else who resembles a star is going to jump from a burning truck or leap out of an exploding helicopter. They're known as the stunt double. Here you can see below in the picture is Brad Pitt. To the right is his stunt double for one of his movies. Pronouns work the same way. When a noun is about to wear itself out in a sentence, a pronoun can hop in. The sentence reads better, the noun takes a break, and the reader is happier. Below you can see lots of different pronouns. Here's some more examples. Justin can become he. The noun Hannah becomes she. Our class can become we. Miss Riley's class can become them. Let's talk about adjectives. Adjectives are to a writer what paints are to a painter. They bring color, texture, depth, and detail to the scene that you are creating. Suppose you were writing a few sentences about a moonlit night. You might say something like, "One night I sat on the grass looking up at the sky. I saw the moon." Kind of boring, right? Check it out with some adjectives. One chilly fall night, I sat on the cool grass looking up at the sky. The moon threw piercing white light down upon me. Now you're able to visualize the scene. Adjectives give more information about nouns or pronouns. Remember, a pronoun can always stand in for a noun. Adjectives can tell us about the color, the size, the shape, the texture, the condition, or how many there are of a noun. Let's look at this example. 3 huge red ants crawled onto the glassy surface of the oval desk, ate most of a day-old enchilada, and immediately got sick. We have pretty much every kind of adjective here. 3 is going to tell us how many. Huge tells us their size. Red tells us the color. Glassy is describing the texture of the desk. Oval tells the shape. Day-old tells the condition of the enchilada. And sick tells the condition of the ants. Articles are a special type of adjective, and there are only 3 to remember, which makes it very easy. A or an and the. There are articles, but they are a type of adjective. So if we're talking about parts of speech and I ask you to classify an article, you can refer to them as an adjective. Let's talk about verbs. Verbs move things. Planets, people, cars, bikes, and sentences of all kinds. Marvin slammed his finger in the door and howled, "Grab me some ice." Slammed, howled, and grab are all showing action. Lisa snatched her briefcase off the counter and ran for the subway. Again, our verbs are snatched and ran. Jay whined and whimpered until his mother said, "Okay, you can go to the party." Whined, whimpered, said, and notice can go. Don't forget about our helping verbs. Can is part of the verb here. It's helping go. So if I ask for the verb of that sentence, you would tell me can go. Not just go, don't forget the helping verb. Verbs are everywhere. Take a ride and you will see them littering our highways. Stop, merge, go, yield. Traffic signs are almost always consisting of a verb. Now let's kind of quiz ourselves and see if we can spot some verbs. Juanita gobbled 3 mini pizzas and a burger before she fainted. Gobbled is a verb. Fainted is a verb. Chad grabbed a pitcher of orange juice and sloshed it in Juanita's face. Take a moment and see if you can find the verbs. Grabbed is a verb, and sloshed is a verb. How about this sentence? Juanita bolted upright and gasped for air. Bolted and gasped. One more. You could have murdered me, she screamed. Here we have could have. Remember your helping verbs working together here. And screamed, and of course murdered. Almost forgot it. So could have are helping verbs for murdered. Like nouns, verbs are a key part of any sentence. Every sentence must have a verb. Now let's talk about adverbs, which I think are one of the trickiest parts of speech. You can tell what adverbs do just by listening to their name. Adverbs add to verbs. They give us more information about how, when, or to what extent the action of the verb is being performed. However, they also add to adjectives and to other adverbs. I think that's what makes them confusing. They're basically working like an adjective, but adjectives can only modify nouns. Adverbs modify kind of everything else, verbs, adjectives, and other adverbs. For example, Louise stirred the mashed potatoes. Louise is my noun, stirred is my verb, the is an article, which is a kind of adjective, remember. And then we've got mashed potatoes. Mashed is telling me what kind of potatoes, which is my noun. No adverbs here. Let's add an adverb. Louise stirred the mashed potatoes menacingly. Now I've got an adverb. Menacingly is telling me how Louise stirred. It's adding meaning to the verb. So even though menacingly is not really anywhere close to my verb stirred, that's what it's giving me more information about. It's telling me how she stirred. If you write, the salami sandwich was amazingly delicious, you are telling us how delicious it was. Amazingly this time is an adverb that gives us information about the adjective delicious. It's telling me how delicious. So here I have an adverb modifying an adjective. If you write, Mr. Keith rather tactfully insulted the other coach, you're telling how tactfully he insulted. Rather is an adverb giving added information about another adverb. So let me kind of slow that down for you for a second. So tactfully is an adverb modifying insulted, a verb. It's telling me how he insulted him. He did it tactfully. But then I have another adverb modifying tactfully, telling me how tactfully. How tactfully? Rather tactfully. Here are 3 hints to help you recognize adverbs. They often end in ly, but not always. The words very and to are probably the most common adverbs. Words like never and not are also usually adverbs. Adverbs often answer the question how. They give more information about verbs, adjectives, and other adverbs. Bernice was terribly mean to Dwight during the holidays. Where's the adverb? Terribly is my adverb. And we're modifying mean. We're saying how mean we were to Dwight. So in this case, we have an adverb modifying an adjective. Wayne's parrot has a very scary face. I'm going to give you a second. See if you can spot the adverb. Our adverb is very. Very is modifying scary. Again, we have an adverb giving us more information about an adjective. How scary? Very scary. The frog sat perfectly still as the snake slithered toward it. Can you spot the adverb? Perfectly. And perfectly is modifying still. It's telling us how still. Perfectly. Besides telling you how something is done, adverbs can tell you where it is done. She's going under for the 3rd time. Under is acting as an adverb. Now this is kind of confusing because under can also be a preposition. But in this case, it's modifying the verb going. It's telling me where am I going? Under. If it said something like, I am under a rock, Under a rock would be a prepositional phrase, and then we'd have it functioning differently. That is why grammar can be so confusing. We have words that are not always one part of speech. Sometimes they act as one part of speech, and sometimes they act like a different one. Her hair was combed up into an ice cream cone swirl. Up is modifying combed. It's telling me where. Combed where? Up. Come back, Toto. Come where? Back. So again, now we have adverbs telling us where something is done. Adverbs can also tell you to what extent. For example, I hate Joanna, or I almost hate Joanna. The adverb almost hints at a certain complexity in the relationship between Joanna and you. It tells the degree of your hatred. Prepositions and sentences are like wheels on a car. It's hard to make things run smoothly without them. They're little words that you might not notice, but they connect ideas. Prepositions show how one thing relates to something else, and they are always followed eventually by a noun or a pronoun, forming a prepositional phrase. You might say a pencil is on a desk, or in the desk, or by the desk, or under the desk. On, in, by, under, all of those are prepositions. Notice how each one is forming its own prepositional phrase. On the desk is a prepositional phrase. Desk is the noun in that prepositional phrase. In the desk, by the desk, under the desk. All of these prepositions are basically words that are showing relationship. They're showing how the pencil relates to the desk. Imagine now that you're discussing ships around the Imperial Death Star. If you're not familiar with the Imperial Death Star, I would suggest that at some point you watch the movie Star Wars. I have ships. I can talk about where they are in relation to the Death Star, and all of those words are probably going to be prepositions. I can say that the ship is over the Death Star. I can say it's through it or around it. I can say it's under it or by it, beside it. All of those types of words are all prepositions. Often prepositions relate one idea to another. You might write to your mother, "I'm staying in Phoenix for the weekend," which means that you will be spending time in Phoenix and not with your mom. However, if you add "in the county jail," you have a completely different message. If you add "for armed robbery," your mother will probably become very upset by the ideas these prepositions are relating. Mothers much prefer messages like "I'm staying in Phoenix for an interview about a scholarship to Harvard." Notice that prepositional phrases do not need commas. You can stack on prepositional phrases just like Legos. Notice in these sentences that our prepositions are in red, and I can just string them along. Like I said, just like Legos, no comma needed. Now we're going to talk about conjunctions. When you look at a beautiful fountain with the water splashing over the cool stones, you don't say, "Look at the lovely cement connecting those stones." Nobody notices the cement, not even the people who put it there. But everyone sees the pattern of the stones with their unique shapes and colors. So it is with conjunctions. They're the cement between words. They bind other words and even entire sentences into one unit. For example, you might say, "I'm digging a hole and burying my dead turtle." You don't really notice that word "and," but without it, your sentence really wouldn't make sense. Conjunctions connect things. Here are a few examples of commonly used conjunctions in our language. Now there are 7 coordinating conjunctions. Notice I'm kind of getting more specific here. So we've got the big category conjunctions, and I want you to be able to distinguish between more than one type of conjunction. So I've got 7 coordinating conjunctions. Sometimes these require a comma, but only when they are used to connect 2 independent clauses. We'll be talking a lot more about that later. In the meantime, I want you to memorize these 7 conjunctions. An acronym to help you remember them is FANBOYS. Notice the F stands for A for and, N for nor, B for but, O for or, Y for yet, S for so. I promise you that if you take the time to memorize these 7 coordinating conjunctions, you're going to find that understanding your comma usage rules is going to become much easier and it's really going to help you down the road. Let's look at a few coordinating conjunctions. First of all, Look at this first sentence. I'm going to the mall and you're not coming with me. Can you identify the coordinating conjunction? It's the word and. Now I'm going to ask myself, okay, I see that coordinating conjunction, and is it connecting two independent clauses? I'm going to the mall. You're not coming with me. And I find that it is. If I have a coordinating conjunction and it's connecting two sentences, I'm going to need a comma. See why you need to memorize them? Smile when you ask for permission or she will be furious. I've got a coordinating conjunction over here with this or. That word for could also perhaps catch your attention because it is a coordinating conjunction, but in this situation, it is acting as a preposition. So in this case, I do have two independent clauses. Smile when you ask for permission, she'll be furious. So I need a comma. Everyone but Janet walked the plank with grace and with style. Actually, I have a couple coordinating conjunctions here. I've got the word but, I've got the word and. Then I need to pay attention to what they're doing in the sentence. Everyone but Janet. Let's look at either side of this first one, but. Everyone. On the other side, Janet walked the plank with grace and with style. I've got a complete sentence on the right-hand side, but not on the left-hand side. Everyone is not a sentence on its own, so there does not need to be a comma here. Let's look at our other one. Everyone but Janet walked the plank with grace. That works. Now let's look at the other side of and, with style. With style doesn't have a subject or a verb, so there's no complete sentence there, so there's no need for commas with these coordinating conjunctions. I'm canceling your debt, for our relationship means more to me than a measly $1 million. In this case, my conjunction is the word for. And I do have an independent clause on each side, so I need a comma there. Notice this word for is tricky. Sometimes it's a preposition, but in this case, it's working as a coordinating conjunction. It's joining two independent clauses. Janet took the leopard for a walk in Central Park. In this case, I don't have any coordinating conjunctions. I might have thought for was a coordinating conjunction, but actually here is acting as a preposition. For a walk is a prepositional phrase. In Central Park is also a prepositional phrase. They're showing relationships between the nouns in the sentence. I don't like pigeons, nor do I care to eat them. In this case, nor is my coordinating conjunction, and I do need a comma because it is connecting two independent clauses. I knew you liked rubber cement, yet I didn't think you would eat it. Here I've got yet as my coordinating conjunction, and I do need a comma. Alright, so I told you that you had to memorize those coordinating conjunctions. That's because if it's not a coordinating conjunction, it's probably a subordinating conjunction, and there are a whole bunch of those guys. It is much easier to memorize your 7 coordinating conjunctions than to try and remember all the subordinating conjunctions. Subordinating conjunctions can slip right in front of an independent clause, letting you then join that sentence with another independent clause. For example, you can take a simple sentence, I went to the store. If you put a subordinating conjunction in front of it, all of a sudden you have an incomplete thought, and you need an independent clause to finish out the thought. Since I went to the store, I can't just leave that alone. I need a comma and an independent clause to finish it out. Since I went to the store, I have food. If I went to the store, I could get food. Although I went to the store, I still don't have food. Since, if, and although are all subordinating conjunctions. You slip them right in front of an independent clause, and all of a sudden, you can throw a comma and an independent clause on the end. You could also put subordinating conjunctions in the middle of two independent clauses. No comma needed. Sherry loves aardvarks, although she has never owned one. Mike eats mangoes while he swings on the tire swing. Evelyn hates winter because she's afraid of the snow. Although, while, because, they're all subordinating conjunctions, and they are strong enough to stand on their own, unlike coordinating conjunctions. Another reason to memorize those 7 coordinating conjunctions, they're the guys who would take commas in this situation. If you can use process of elimination, know you're not looking at a coordinating conjunction, and you'll know that you don't need a comma here. Notice also that I could flip these sentences. For the first one, for example, I could start my sentence here with although and say, although she has never owned one, Sherry loves aardvarks. While he swings on the tire swing, Mikey eats mangoes. Because she's afraid of the snow, Evelyn hates winter. So just notice how these work. These subordinating conjunctions basically turn an independent clause into a dependent clause. And then they got to be joined up with another independent clause. We'll be talking a lot more about that later. But I just want you right now to really be able to distinguish the difference between a coordinating conjunction and a subordinating conjunction. Now let's talk about interjections. They are words or short phrases that show strong emotion or surprise in a sentence. They act like crashing cymbals. Bang! The reader is suddenly alert. For example, hey, don't kill flies with my new shoes. Yikes, that's a long way down. Yes, I am glad to see you. Well, I've never been so insulted in my life. Notice that there's kind of a difference here. Something like hey or yikes is definitely more exclamatory, whereas something like yes or well is an interjection, but perhaps it's not creating a ton of emotion. Notice that the interjections can stand on their own if they do signify lots of emotion. Hey! Exclamation point, come back here. Or they can be set off with a comma. Yes, I love some soup. There's really no reason to say, yes, I love some soup, most likely. So it really only requires a comma. Basically, interjections are just a little bit of extra something that comes generally at the beginning of a sentence. Overall, we have 8 parts of speech. So we've spent time now discussing nouns, pronouns, adjectives, verbs, adverbs, prepositions, conjunctions, and interjections. And we will be definitely talking about these in the very near future and getting lots of practice.